When we look at the modern world, its politics, its economy, its illusions of democracy, we are compelled to ask, what are the greatest social risks of humanity today? Not wars alone, not pandemics, not even artificial intelligence. The deepest risks are within ourselves, in the way we organize our societies and distribute responsibility for our shared future. As Plato once said, "The price good men pay for indifference to public affairs is to be ruled by evil men." And so, indifference, not ignorance, not even poverty, may be the greatest threat of all. 1. The concentration of power. In every country, the governance of society lies in the hands of a limited number of people. This has been the rule since the dawn of civilization. Kings once ruled by divine right. Today, presidents and ministers rule by the will of the people. But in essence, little has changed. The philosopher John Stuart Mill wrote, "The worth of a state in the long run is the worth of the individuals composing it." But yet the individuals composing our states, the millions, are excluded from actual participation. Decision-making is concentrated in elites who often serve their own interests before the public's. People vote once every 4 or 5 years. They choose between faces they do not know, programs they do not read, promises they do not believe. And this ritual, repeated endlessly, is called democracy. Between elections, there is no mechanism for recall, accountability, or punishment for those who betray their duties. A citizen may be fined or imprisoned for a small offense. A politician may ruin economies, destroy lives, or lead nations to war, and face no real consequence. As George Orwell warned, a society becomes totalitarian when its structure becomes flagrantly artificial, when its ruling class has lost its function but succeeds in clinging to power by force or fraud. This concentration of power is the first and most dangerous social risk of humanity. 2. The disconnection of the people. When the majority of the population no longer participates in social governance, the state becomes a machine that runs without a human soul. Imagine the global society is a vast system of data, billions of human experiences, thoughts, and ideas. When only a few have access to this data, humanity operates blindly. As you remove data, you reduce intelligence. When you remove people from decisions, you reduce wisdom. Albert Einstein once said, "We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them." But if the same small group continues to think for the whole of humanity, the system becomes stagnant, self-referential, and doomed to repeat its own errors. 3. The illusion of democracy. In theory, democracy means power of the people. In practice, it has become the power to choose one's masters from a pre-selected list. Citizens are treated as clients in a political marketplace. They are persuaded, manipulated, and sold narratives. After the election, their role ends, and for the next 4 years, those representatives act independently of those who supposedly empowered them. There is no mechanism for public correction, no possibility to remove a dishonest official between elections. In ancient Athens, such recall was possible. In modern democracies, it is almost unthinkable. As Thomas Jefferson wrote in 1787, "The tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants." He did not glorify violence, he warned of decay. If a society cannot renew itself, if the people cannot act, liberty withers. 4. The failure of accountability. The second great risk lies in the absence of justice at the highest levels of power. Those who bear the greatest responsibility often bear the least consequence. Political leaders who mismanage nations are rewarded with pensions and memoirs. Corporate heads who devastate economies retreat behind legal walls. Socrates believed that virtue was knowledge, that no one does wrong knowingly. But history shows otherwise. From Nero to Napoleon, from dictators to modern executives, those in power have acted not out of ignorance, but from calculated self-interest. And yet their punishments are light, their trials symbolic. The higher one climbs, the softer the fall. In contrast, the ordinary person who errs is punished swiftly and harshly. This imbalance destroys faith in justice, and where there is no faith in justice, there can be no social cohesion. As Montesquieu warned, there is no greater tyranny than that which is perpetrated under the shield of the law and in the name of justice. 5. The social divide, rich and poor. The next danger is the widening gap between the rich and poor. We live in an era of unprecedented wealth and technology, yet also of profound inequality. In nearly every country, the top 1% controls more wealth than the bottom 50%. This is not merely an economic issue, it is a social and psychological one. When wealth becomes concentrated, power follows it. And when power becomes concentrated, democracy weakens further. As Mahatma Gandhi once said, "The world has enough for everyone's need, but not enough for everyone's greed." Modern society has perfected the art of creating comfort for the few and distraction for the many. The poor are pacified by entertainment, consumption, and the illusion of opportunity. So long as they remain quiet, the elite remains safe. This is the hidden balance that sustains the status quo. 6. The preservation of power. At the top of society, what truly matters is not progress or justice, but stability of control. The elites, political, financial, media, share one common fear: the loss of power. They build systems that ensure the population remains in a state of minimal satisfaction, fed enough to avoid revolt, but deprived enough to avoid empowerment. They fund narratives, control information, and shape public opinion not to advance civilization, but to preserve their own positions. Niccolò Machiavelli described this centuries ago. It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. Today's rulers are no longer feared, they are ignored. And yet their systems are designed to prevent genuine participation or challenge. This blindness, this collective arrogance, may be the seed of their own downfall. 7. The blindness of the elite. History shows that the greatest collapses often come not from revolution, but from apathy. When the people no longer believe in the system, when they stop participating, the state begins to rot from within. It loses innovation, creativity, and resilience. The elites believe they are protecting themselves by isolating power, but in truth, they are cutting themselves off from the source of human vitality. As Alexander de Tocqueville wrote, "In a democracy, the people get the government they deserve. But if the people are silenced, deceived, or excluded, what government do they deserve then?" This blindness is a kind of suicide in slow motion. The elite, by removing millions from meaningful participation, deprive themselves of the very intelligence and diversity that could save humanity in crisis. 8. The cost of exclusion. When vast numbers of people are removed from social decision-making, humanity loses its data, the living data of experience, creativity, and moral diversity. A society that listens only to its rulers becomes predictable, rigid, and slow. It cannot adapt to new threats, be they economic, ecological, or existential. The future requires complexity, and complexity requires inclusion. Every excluded voice is a lost equation in the great formula of survival. The fewer perspectives we process, the less accurate our collective decisions become. And when decisions lose accuracy, civilization begins to stumble blindly towards its own disasters. As Winston Churchill once remarked, democracy is the worst form of government, except for all the others that have been tried. Perhaps so, but even democracy must evolve, or it will decay into oligarchy. 9. The coming social apathy. If the majority of people lose faith in the system, the result may not be revolution, but resignation. A quiet, invisible catastrophe, a global apathy. People stop caring. They work without meaning. They vote without hope. They live without vision. This silent collapse can be more dangerous than war. It drains societies of purpose and individuals of identity. As Friedrich Nietzsche warned, he who has a why to live can bear almost any how. When the why disappears, civilization begins to drift. This apathy may lead to mass migration, social paralysis, and a deep depression of the collective psyche, conditions from which recovery could take generations. 10. The absence of vision. Among all risks, perhaps the most subtle and the most dangerous is the loss of ideas. Humanity today has technology, wealth, and data, but it lacks a vision of the future. Governments manage crises, they do not dream. Corporations innovate for profit, not for purpose. The philosopher Karl Jaspers said, "We cannot live without faith in the possibility of a future." When a society ceases to believe in its own progress, it starts to decline, no matter how powerful its machines. Our current political and financial elites rarely speak of moral, civilizational, or spiritual development. Their vocabulary is limited to economics, security, and consumption. A society without a moral horizon becomes trapped in the present. It cannot imagine, and therefore it cannot evolve. 11. Risks of the future. If this trend continues, concentration of power, inequality, exclusion, and loss of vision, humanity will face crises it cannot comprehend. We will be unprepared for the great challenges ahead: ecological collapse, artificial intelligence without ethics, space exploration without purpose, and internal decay of meaning. As the Roman historian Livy wrote 2,000 years ago, we have reached the point where we can tolerate neither our vices nor their cure. This is where we stand today, between corruption and paralysis, knowing what must change, yet unwilling to change it. 12. The call for renewal. Yet all is not lost. Every civilization before us has faced a similar turning point, the moment when its elites grew detached and its citizens disillusioned. But renewal always begins with awareness. It begins when people stop accepting the illusion that democracy means voting once every few years. It begins when societies create mechanisms for recall, accountability, and direct participation. It begins when truth becomes more valuable than convenience. As Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter." To speak is to resist. To participate is to heal. The social risks of humanity are vast, but they are not inevitable. We can design societies where transparency is real, where power is temporary, and where responsibility is shared. 13. The responsibility of the individual. Every person has a role in this. To remain silent is to cooperate with decay. To remain passive is to strengthen the system that excludes you. The future of democracy may depend not on new institutions, but on new individuals, conscious, informed, and courageous. As Hannah Arendt wrote, the most radical revolutionary will become a conservative the day after the revolution. The solution is not revolt, but evolution, the slow transformation of awareness, values, and structures. We must learn to include, to listen, and to hold power accountable, even our own. 14. The path forward. Humanity must learn to distribute power more widely, ensure transparency and equality before the law, value knowledge and moral integrity over wealth and status, and cultivate shared visions of the future. Otherwise, the same cycles will repeat, the few ruling the many withdrawing, and civilization losing its direction. As Leonardo da Vinci once wrote, "Nothing strengthens authority so much as silence." Let us, then, no longer be silent. Conclusion. The greatest social risks of humanity are not weapons, not hunger, not even climate change. They are the internal diseases of civilization: apathy, inequality, corruption, and blindness. Every empire has fallen not because of external enemies, but because it lost its soul from within. We stand today at such a crossroads. The question is not whether humanity will survive. It almost certainly will. The question is what kind of humanity will survive. Will it be a species ruled by a few and numbed by indifference? Or will it be a civilization awakened, participatory, just, and visionary? The answer depends on whether we are willing to reclaim our right not just to vote, but to think, to question, and to dream. As Albert Camus wrote, "The only way to deal with an unfree world is to become so absolutely free that your very existence is an act of rebellion." Let that freedom begin, not in governments, but in minds.